Ubisoft boss says it knows players think it has an inconsistency in quality, so it delayed AC Shadows to flip that script. It's funny because this is like almost word for word exactly what I've been saying for months in our videos talking about Ubisoft, is that they have the perception of inconsistent quality. I would argue because they do have inconsistent quality. Some of the stuff they put out is really good, like Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown. Other stuff they put out is, what's the technical term? Crap. So it's really hard to know whether you should put your money up front and buy a game at launch. We just earlier in this stream played their brand new NFT game that came out like 3 days ago. They launched an NFT game in 2024 like 3 days ago, 4 days ago, whatever it was. And in that game, in case you've not seen that segment, I don't know in which order Jacob will edit them or put them together, but in case you've not seen it, in that game, people are selling their NFTs for $295 million. Okay? This is why people are not that confident in Ubisoft's decision-making right now, okay? Like, this is unreal that this exists. It's shocking. I would be upset over a $90 token, but there's people trolling in here with $128 million NFTs. It's crazy. It's insanity, okay? I do think that this is at least maybe a bit of self-awareness, to say the very least, that they are aware of this perception. Let's see. People have their gripes, but I still quite enjoy a big old Ubisoft open world. There's something about the studio's formula for things like AC and Far Cry that lets me achieve a zen state. Just me, a controller, a map with little icons to tick off, absolutely zero regions, my brain lighting up, bliss. I've said for a long time, these are junk food games. Think of eating popcorn or like those nerd gummy clusters that are dangerously addicting. You know, you can just pop them in and you're getting nothing from it. It's just like a little bit of sugar, little shot of dopamine, and that's it. But it's just enough to keep you grabbing another and another and another. And you can't really explain it, but you're hooked. That's what Ubisoft games are kind of like, you know, when they click. They don't always click, but when they do click, that's kind of what they are. They're junk food games. They give you no sustenance. There's not much meat on the bone at all, but you will be able to get a lot of it because there's a lot there. It's relatively cheap for how much is there, and it all tastes the same. And if you eat too much of it, you will get sick, but it's there. It's available to you. Not everybody will love it. Not everybody will want it, but still sells gangbusters nonetheless. So I do totally agree with that it is a good veg out kind of content. But Lord knows I'm not the market at large, and it's not difficult to find people criticizing the company for its game's sameness or writing or straight up technical bugs. Ubisoft knows that too, which is why AC's vice president and executive producer Marc-Alexis Cotier recently told Eurogamer that Ubisoft's portfolio has faced criticism in recent years for perceived inconsistency in quality, and that's why AC Shadows got pushed to February of next year. I mean, it was because of Star Wars Outlaws. And this is there's kind of two factors with this that work in tandem that affect this. So with Ubisoft, they have a problem where up here, there is like, maybe we say jank, where there's a jankiness with their games where they don't tend to work super great at launch. They might be buggy. They might be broken. There's problems, right? And then tied with that is also the perception that the game is going to go on sale. And so what happens is, because people know that the games are probably janky and probably not working super great at launch, they wait for a sale. And because Ubisoft knows that you're going to wait for a sale, almost certainly, they're not going to bother polishing the game immediately because they can spend an extra month or two after launch polishing it, since you're just going to wait for a sale anyways. So why put in the extra effort up front to polish it up if you're just going to wait for a sale? So it's just this cycle where the game is janky, so people wait for a sale, but Ubisoft keeps the games janky and never fixes them ahead of time because they know you're just going to wait for a sale. So because you're just going to start here or end up here no matter what, they end up leaving it janky. And it eventually devolves into sort of where they've ended up now, which is that very few people want to buy a Ubisoft game at launch on day one at full price because they know it's probably going to be a little buggy and janky, and they know they can get it for 30, 40, 50, 60% off in a few months. So why would you? Why would you buy it on day one? Unless it's like a game you have been waiting years for or something, which Ubisoft doesn't typically have. So it's certainly been the issue. And Star Wars Outlaws is the prime example of it, where they just kind of, I mean, they had a Star Wars open world game, but because of AI problems that were just, the AI was brain dead and not compelling at all, because of all these problems with polish and refinement and the facial animations and things like that, people weren't confident in buying it day one. I do think a lot of people will buy it on like Black Friday, will buy it over Christmas and be like, I can't believe people said this was bad. I'm having a really good time. I do think a lot of people will enjoy Star Wars Outlaws, especially once it's been fixed. Apparently they have a huge update coming on the 21st that will fix most things. We'll try it. We'll see if it actually does, but they say that they're going to be doing a big overhaul to like the AI and all of that stuff. So we're going to try that. But going back to like the cycle, they should have just done that up front. And then I could have given it an easy recommend as like an 8 something out of 10, meaning this goes away and you should just buy the game. And then they don't need to put it on sale because the game is really good now and they can keep it at full price or close to it, which is what Nintendo does all the time. They release typically relatively polished games and they never need to put it on sale because they know you're going to buy it no matter what. So things just stay at full price forever. But I think he is correct that there's inconsistent quality, or at the very least a perception. Notice how the corporate speak. There's a perceived inconsistency in quality, implying maybe that perception is not accurate, but nonetheless there's a perception there. But like we've said many times on this channel, perception is the reality you have to deal with, and so at least they're acknowledging that. Quote, players can afford to be selective, choosing only the best, and they rightfully demand excellence. Your average player in 2024 expects, quote, more polish, more innovation, and deeper engagement from the games we release, and they're not shy about letting us know when they feel we have fallen short. Boy, ain't that the truth. Indeed. Indeed. What's it leaky to? Steam review bombing is gaming's most powerful method of protest. 3 key takeaways from Helldivers 2 Weekend Meltdown. That's funny. Yeah, it's players certainly will let you know, and the other piece is they'll let you know even when it's not like maybe when it's not totally fair. Okay, continuing on. In other words, Ubisoft has been stung by all the criticism it's gotten, and, quote, Assassin's Creed Shadows represents our opportunity to change that narrative, not just for AC, but I think for Ubisoft as a whole. Hence, the shift to a February release after originally being penned for November. In today's market, being amongst the best is just not enough anymore. I was talking to Jacob about this and my brothers about it. I was like, dude, have gamers like expectations outpaced reality, or are the expectations still fair? Because even now, like with polish, for example, Dragon Age Veilguard honestly is probably the most polished game, technically speaking, that I've played in a hot minute. It really is that good. Even other games like Baldur's Gate 3, Act 3 was broken as hell. There are still bugs where you can't get through certain quest lines in Baldur's Gate, depending on certain actions you take. Like, it's still pretty buggy. And so, like, I think to that extent, having polished games, people are not expecting perfection, but I do think people are expecting it to run on console, have a performance mode at 60, and people are expecting games to not have like game-breaking bugs, which I think has always been the expectation. So I don't think those technical demands have gotten outpaced. I do think like you'll see people really freak out about games being locked to 30, for example, but even when people freaked out over Starfield being locked at 30 on console, it still had the biggest launch of any Bethesda game ever. So even the $60 or the 60 FPS thing, I'm not sure if that directly translates to sales. Dragon's Dogma 2 also did not run particularly great at launch, but that also sold millions of copies. So I'm not sure if the FPS thing also translates. There's a lot of noise around it, but I'm not sure if it actually translates. As for like the quality and innovation and stuff and those expectations, I think that's where people are at. People don't want to spend $70 for a game that feels just like something they played 5 years ago. People want there to be a step forward. People want things to be improved. And when they just play something that feels like a carbon copy of something they've played before, I think that they are less willing to put up with it now than they were maybe 8-9 years ago, where you could pump out very similar games where it's like, oh, it's just another open world, but it's in a different setting. And you could probably get away with that. It's the same thing where like these big companies are thoroughly confused that they spend $200 million on something and it doesn't automatically succeed. You know, it's like, well, but we spent so much money on it. What do you mean you guys don't like it? It's because people are more complicated than that. People have expectations beyond that, you know? So I don't think players' expectations have outpaced what's realistically possible. I think players just expect AAA games to be cutting edge. And I think that that's fair. If you're going to charge literally top dollar, the max price you can charge for a game without being ridiculed, then you should be able to provide an experience that is top notch, that is better than what you could get elsewhere. And if you can't deliver that, if you can't do that, you probably shouldn't be charging what you're charging. You know? So that's kind of where I'm at least. I think we should be expectations tied to price are much more clear cut now. I think that's a big thing. Let's see. So to boil it down, it sounds like Kotia is saying Shadows was in a good but not great spot for a November release, at least in Ubisoft's Ubisoft's estimation, and that the game has been delayed to give it a chance to reach that next level of quality before it gets into players' hands. What that translates to in non-executive speak is harder to say. Was the game going to be a train wreck if it launched in November? Would it have been just a little buggy? Has Ubisoft been spooked by the outrage confected by the most tedious people on the internet about the game starring a black samurai in hopes that by delaying that particular storm in a teacup will blow over? This is kind of like it's a strange way to phrase it. I think people's frustrations with Yasuke as a playable character, some people are, to be clear, some people are just like total like racist buffoons about it. I've seen some of those in the comment section, and I've gotten comments where like one guy was like, "You've been deleting my comments on your video about AC Shadows," and I looked up his username, and I hadn't deleted anything. It was YouTube's automated comment moderation system because he was comparing Yasuke to a certain animal that lives in trees. And so YouTube flagged that and blocked his comments. Shocker, right? So there's people like that. But I think that is, maybe this is overly generous, but I think that those people represent a minority of the people that are upset about Yasuke. I think the reason a lot of people are kind of upset about the whole thing is because Ubisoft has been trying to act as though they were not sort of trying to push for diversity first and foremost, and that they were not trying to pander to people. They were like, no, it just honestly was the best choice narratively that we had. And then Yasuke comes on screen, and then like this hip hop inspired music kicks on. It's like, okay, like we know what you're trying to do. Like we know what you're doing. Okay. Don't lie to us. Like we know. If you were just like, hey, yeah, we're trying to create the most diverse cast we can, at least then you're just being real with us. But it's the gaslighting that I really can't stand. Do I think that makes a good game bad? No, but it certainly does not make me particularly like thrilled to talk about the game. It's just kind of like annoying. So I think there's that. As for whether it blows over the outrage, honestly, I don't think like Asmongold's fans were ever going to play AC Shadows. So I don't think that that's really there. Yeah, Yasuke, as knows nobody says on Twitch, it's been bizarre. He's been in other games and anime as well. Yeah, there's certain things Ubisoft cannot get away with, but that other companies could. Like with Neo, wasn't Yasuke in Neo as well? I'm pretty sure. So like, I think that there's that, but I don't think like Asmongold's group was ever going to buy this. So even if they are very vocally outraged by it, I don't think that translates to lost sales because I don't think they were ever going to buy it anyways. The problem is that it diminishes the number of people willing to make earned media for the game promoting it, which is a problem. Whenever there's like a big upcoming game for Ubisoft, their hope is that they can spend X amount of dollars on marketing for it. And then, you know, they can, let's just do it this way. Boop. They're hoping they can spend out of their total marketing budget. We just do a pie. Let's do a pie. Okay. I can't make a circle. Oh my God. Let's say they do that, or I could do a shape. Ooh, that's way better. So they're hoping that they can spend this much money on earned or on paid media. Okay. So these are things like trailers or sponsored I tried videos or whatever, where they do that. They might fly some people out to try the game or something like that. That's how much money they're spending there. And their hope is that they can then earn all of this media where YouTubers are talking about the game, where streamers are talking about it, TikTokers are making little videos screaming at their audience. Did you know that Assassin's Creed Shadows is a big upcoming game? Make sure to tell your little brother to create a secondary account and follow me, and I'll give away a piece PlayStation 5 and not tell anyone who won. You know, that kind of thing. That's what they're hoping for, is that this happens because that can justify this initial spending. The problem, though, is that when there's a huge like scandal around the game, nobody wants to talk about it because it's not worth the headache. So instead of all that, they might generate like this much earned media from like the diehard channels. But other people are just not going to bother talking about it. They're just not going to bother. Then you just have this void. And this is what you need to make up. So either they need to spend a lot more on marketing, which often doesn't really look well. It comes off as like really desperate when you start really going into overdrive for a game people consider uncool. Or you just have to lower expectations for how much the game is going to sell, or it's not going to sell at launch. It's going to make that up on the back end. But this is the big kind of problem with something like Shadows. I don't think like Asmongold's crew is ever going to buy it. They might be the most upset about it. I don't think they're ever going to buy it though. But I do think that you'll see a lot of YouTubers just not willing to deal with the headache of talking about it and the wave of comments. Even now, like you make a video on Veilguard that's not positive, or even if it's not overwhelmingly positive, and you'll see people coming into the comment section, like attacking people over liking it. And it's just like, do I want to deal with that headache or just talk about something not as controversial? A lot of people just choose not to bother with it. I can't say I blame them. So, and I will say I spoke to one person who's an employee at Ubisoft who told me, I would not blame any of you content creators if you didn't want to talk about AC Shadows at all. He said, I would not blame you. He's like, I've seen the comment sections. I've seen how these people treat those who are willing to give the game a shot. It's like, I don't blame you if you wanted to just never talk about it. And I was like, if somebody at Ubisoft is saying that, that's pretty bad. You know, they know it. So I don't know if this blows over. I think at some point you just have to kind of like just get the game out the door and move on. Like, you're not going to undo the drama. It is what it is. Grums will still be upset about it. Asmon will still be upset about it. I don't think they were ever going to buy the game anyways. So you just kind of do what you're going to do and try to ignore it as best you can. I think that's all they can do at this point. Well, we might be able to gain some insight into where his mind is or went next. AC Unity, which was meant to be Ubisoft's big splashy debut on then new generation consoles back in 2014, but that became a laughingstock over the sheer number of sometimes nightmarish bugs players ran into. Quote, its reception at launch, marred by technical issues, left a deep impact on all parts of the company from production to publishing, especially given Ubisoft's roots as a French company. That's what was particularly egregious about Unity, is that it was supposed to be like their big moment, like, let's show the world our culture and our city and like, let's really do it right. And it was the biggest disaster they've probably ever had as a company, which is remarkable. You know, it's remarkable. He goes on, that was a low point for the studio, I imagine, but it also taught the devs how crucial it was to maintain the quality and integrity of the player experience from day one, a lesson that lives with us to this very day, which sounds to me like Shadows was maybe a little too busted to putting out as early as this month and risking Ubisoft running into another Unity-style fiasco. I mean, imagine if they launched Shadows and it was broken, as broken as Unity. Because if Cotier is saying, like his train of thought, if it really is, Shadows was broken, Shadows needed a delay, we delay, and then it went to, we need to like player expectations and bugs, and then his thought process went to Unity, and that's what we want to avoid. Unity was not just unpolished, Unity was broken. Unity was busted. So if that's his thought process, that makes me think Shadows was well behind where it needed to be. And so even in February when it launches, it still might not be there. But, you know, time will tell. But with all this, I think at least they're aware of the perception. I don't think that necessarily will be fixable, but we'll see. We'll see. They have a lot of work to do. I don't think they can just dig Shadows out of the pit that it's in right now. I think it's just going to be the way that it is.
He took my thing. Red flag.